makes ours look a little bit lacking.
I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Waller,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Miller, Gullickson,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to add the application for permit for one-day on-sale liquor license for the Eagles to an E under consent agenda.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Citizen comments. Anyone would like to speak to the council? MEB, come on up.
I hate that, but okay. It's Mary Elizabeth Bezanson, and I'm so glad to see you all. I was so frankly worried during COVID that you had all fallen over, but you're all here now, except for one. So I wanted to say that I think you probably expected me to talk about sidewalks. No, you're doing a great job with sidewalks. The grinding is going very well, and I'm so pleased. There are a couple of spots over by the Pizza Ranch where the fire hydrant is. That's a trippable. And on 7th Street, there's like 4 inches plus a water main, or you know, those water turn-off places in the sidewalk. And I tripped at the library because the library frontage sidewalks are not smooth, and I was kind of puzzled by why we hadn't fixed those. So, but didn't want to talk about that. And I'm not going to talk about snow shoveling. It's 80 degrees outside. But I know that you've already figured out a plan to tell residents about the requirements to actually shovel their snow within 48 hours of the end of snowing. The problem that you will face is it's supposed to be extra snow this winter. So you're going to have to figure out how to do that. And I was hoping maybe a little whisper into the ears of the people who have businesses next to or abut the railroad tracks, because several people I know in town always walk or use wheels, and those are places that are hardest to get shoveled, maybe. So what I do want to talk to you about is bathrooms. East Side Park. I called early in June to say that the bathrooms weren't unlocked, and a very helpful person said no. But people had been needing a bathroom. So I remembered that the newspaper had carried an article that said that Kim suggested we have porta potties. So I said that, and I heard Blaine in the back room saying, well, we can consider that. And I was so grateful, because 3 days later there were porta potties. Those porta potties were removed about a week ago because they've been there all summer. So what I would really like to know is how much the city has spent so far on fixing the bathrooms that were vandalized in the band show 2 years ago. I don't want to know what the total is, because we don't know what the total is, because we still are doing work maybe. But I want to know how much we spent so far. I'd like to know if we had insurance that covered any of that. I don't know. And I'd like to know what the consequences were for the people who we think vandalized it, because I think we knew who vandalized it. Okay, so then the other bathroom I wanted to talk about is across the street in the building you can see, called the library. The bathrooms in the library are not ADA compliant, I don't believe. I have not tried to find that out specifically, because if I find that out specifically, I will have to file a complaint. But the button, there is no button that allows you to move from the library itself into the hallway where the bathrooms are. There is no button to allow you to get inside the bathroom. And the sink in the bathroom now has several bigger things, including the automatic soap dispenser, the automatic towel dispenser, and a place where you can get rid of syringes. I don't think that anyone using wheels can access that library. And that's very concerning to me. The purpose of the ADA law is to allow people who have certain kinds of mobility disabilities to be engaged in the work of a community. And all laws that discriminate against people are trying to limit people's participation, either intentionally or not, in the engagement of their communities. And I can't imagine how sorrowful people are to know that they can't go to programs in the library because they can't use a bathroom. So I think that we need to think carefully as a council about what it means to be someone who uses wheels in this town, and whether we have done both what legally and morally we should do in order to allow people to fully participate in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Elizabeth.
Any other citizen comments? I think I'd like to, she left. I'd like to address those issues, but we can wait till down another business. Okay, tonight we have a public hearing for a special assessment hearing for the project that we had this year. Get to that.
While he's looking there, there is an agenda for the public hearing on the table there, as well as some information on that Jeff Kuhn's going to be presenting. There's a PowerPoint presentation, and then the city council agenda if you haven't picked one up.
Okay.
All right, we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so the purpose of this hearing is to present to the city council the final assessments for this project. We sent out notices to all the property owners indicating what their assessment amounts were gonna be, gave them information about the process that's in place as far as special assessments. You may recall that in the spring we had a initial hearing where we presented what the project was going to be and got input from all the property owners as to whether or not they wanted to see the project done. And then we went ahead and we bid it, and we hired a contractor to do the work. Yeah, the most important thing in this process is this is your opportunity to tell the city council what your thoughts are on the assessments. And I'm going to go over some information here once Jeff's done. But before the end of this hearing, when the mayor closes the hearing, it's important if you want to challenge the assessment. And there are two challenges, objections to the assessment that are on the city council table that I received this morning in emails. If you want to challenge the assessment, you have to file a written notice with the city council before the end of the hearing. And it's just important to understand that, because once the hearing closes, once the city council takes action on the resolution, all those people that filed objections will have a right to then challenge further to the district court the assessments if they so choose. But nobody else can. That's just the way the process works. And with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Jeff, and then we have a little PowerPoint here, but quite frankly, everybody's probably got one in hand if you want to look at it. I'll just pull this up.
So I'll turn it over to Jeff Kuhn. Jeff's the engineer that is the city engineer. He's in charge of the project, and he can explain what we did.
Thank you, Blaine. All right, I'm just going to kind of go over quickly the 3 project areas. Like Blaine said, we're here for the final assessment hearing for 3 areas, Columbia Avenue from 7th Street out to Trunk Highway 28, on East 6th Street from Columbia Avenue down to California Avenue, and also on Iowa Avenue, basically from Trunk Highway 28 out to the north city limits. Each area was a little unique in regards to them, the project. The first area we're going to talk about is Columbia Avenue, a street and utility improvement with state aid. The water main in that area was sufficient to stay as it was. So let's go back to Columbia Avenue. Again, state aid route. So there are some state aid dollars that help pay for a good chunk of those improvements. You'll see later on in one of the slides, we have somewhere in the amount of $750,000 just north of that dollars that are helping pay for some of the street and sidewalk and storm sewer. Okay. In addition to that, there was some sanitary sewer and water main. Those assessments on a unit basis ended up being around $3,463.32 for the sanitary sewer and $4,238.53 for the water main. Columbia Avenue, again on its own, the assessments would have been a little bit higher. The city ends up picking up a portion of those costs due to the low number of assessments along that route. Also then, we ended up looking at what the city's running averages on those assessments over the number of years for sewer and water, and we come up with a determination. 6th Street, the street costs and the utility costs help kind of allow us to determine what that running average is.
Are you still on this first?
I'm sorry. Yes, we can move. We can move to the next slide or
Just
2.
hang on a second here. I just realized that you guys didn't get yours.
I can move that. So that's the Columbia Avenue one. We can talk a little bit more about that if need to, but there, like I said, we rebuilt the street, the storm, the curb and gutter, water, sanitary sewer, and sidewalk. And the assessments are there for the sanitary and the water. Okay. It's a little maybe hard to see that, but you should be able to see a little bit on your handout. It does run from 7th Street, East 7th Street, all the way up to Trunk Highway 28. Okay? 6th Street. Like I said, 6th Street runs from Columbia Avenue down to California Avenue. We rebuilt the street, curb and gutter, storm sewer, so water main, sanitary sewer, and sidewalk as well. On the assessments for 6th Street, we had the same amounts that we're assessing on Columbia Avenue there for sanitary sewer, $3,400, $36.32. Water again, $42.38.53. Again, this goes on a little bit. The city looking back at the running average, what the city's water main costs were for this stretch of work. We kind of then determined based on what the city's in a reasonable amount that they can assess towards benefiting properties and kind of come up with these amounts looking at a number of factors. These are the numbers that we had come up with for this project. The street costs are put into a total. We come up with that, and then we've got a total accessible footage along 6th Street, and we come up with this cost per lineal foot. It ends up being $68.64 for this particular area. Curb and gutter then is also similarly, we put the costs in associated with the curb and gutter, the removals, and some of the soft costs, and we come up with $35.87 a lineal foot on the curb and gutter assessment. Those then kind of get figured into the lots along 6th Street, kind of a running average, I think around 50 feet, I think the running average is for the normal lot along 6th Street. Okay? Switching to Iowa Avenue real quick. Again, we talked about this, rural section, local street, no state aid monies. Rebuilt the street after we had put in the new underground sanitary sewer, replaced the culvert. The assessments for this are on a unit basis. We took again that sanitary sewer average that we're using on the other 2 project areas, that 34, 36, 32, and applying those to, I believe we have 5 assessments, I think, out on Iowa Avenue, something like that, 5 or 6. It's not very many again. And then the street assessment on this particular one ended up being around $35.18 a lineal foot for this project area. Okay? So we look at the total project details. Estimated project cost was around $2.9 million. The total amount that we are assessing, the city will assess, is around a little over $600,000, $609,000. The state aid portion there is around that $750,000. The city's portion ends up being $1.5 million, just a little over. Overall, these assessments are planned to be extended out over a 15-year payment if they're not paid in full. The interest rate that would be applied to that 15-year period is 5.65% yearly from the date of when the assessment has been adopted. Again, like I said, if not paid in full within 30 days, if it was paid within 30 days, no interest would be applied. Okay. With that,
Do you want to just give a quick update on where the project is right now, Jeff?
Thank you, Blaine. Yes. Yes, so the project isn't 100% complete. We are doing these based on projected final costs. We have the first lift of asphalt that's been placed on both Columbia and East 6th Street, with probably most of the sidewalk is already, I believe, placed on 6th Street. So we'll have some boulevard work and restoration that still has to happen, along with the final lift of asphalt, which we're going to push into next year. We're going to allow the project areas both on, or all 3, to sit over winter to see if there's any further settlement that'll occur before we put the final lift of asphalt on. Also, with getting close to the end of the season here for grass growing, my guess is we'll probably have a little bit of a dormant seed that'll probably end up having to be touched up again next spring for final turf restoration. Columbia Avenue, I believe it's scheduled that later on this week we're going to have the curb and gutter get placed either Thursday or Friday later this week. Once that curb and gutter is placed, then they can they have to wait about a week before they can kind of finish the restoration along the topsoil placement along that new fresh curb and gutter sidewalk. Once that happens, then we can kind of move into that dormant seeding as well. Iowa Avenue, they were making a correction on some of the sanitary sewer that was placed here that was a little bit out of spec. Once that gets rectified, then they will come in and put the first lift of asphalt on that as well. So paving on all 3, there will be some carryover into next year's work. The numbers are based off some estimates. Any different from the estimate to the final cost is going to be borne by the city. So, okay. Any questions from council at all? And then I'll ask from, also from the public.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments before we go to the public, just so that you know and understand how all this works. So in order for us to do a special assessment, one of the things that we have to be able to do is we have to show that there's value to the property owners of this. And it's a very tricky thing to be able to do that because every single property is different, and we know and understand that East 6th Street has a number of rental houses, Columbia Avenue, number of rental houses, there's some lower value houses. But one of the things that we do as a city prior to doing one of these, and one of the things that we talked about during the preliminary hearing that we had before the city council decided to do the assessment project, was we hired an appraiser out of the Twin Cities that came in and did what's called a general appraisal of value. So the idea that all of this work that we've done wouldn't have any value to a property owner doesn't make sense. The idea that a very high value of the work that we're doing would have the same value to a property owner probably doesn't make sense. And one of the things that I'll share with the city council on this one is our normal assessment for water and sewer is 75% of the cost of that project. This assessment, the assessment roll you have, is at 50%. And in some cases, like Iowa Avenue, we put sanitary sewer down Iowa Avenue, there is only 4 connections. So you can't split the sewer on Iowa Avenue by 4, you know, and so then we have to make some of the adjustments, and that's one of the things Jeff mentioned. We do keep track of a rolling average of really what assessments are, and we do that for the main reason that if we have a brand new property and they're gonna hook up to our sewer system or our water system, they have to be charged a fee to connect up to the system. So we have this rolling average, and so they would pay that amount to connect up. When we looked at the appraisal letters, to be in that area right around $12,000, $13,000 for an assessment is really kind of the sweet spot to be. It doesn't mean that that one particular house is gonna have the same value as another house. Because the only way we could have done that is if we would have had that appraiser do an appraisal on every single property individually. Yeah, and so it's a really tough kind of science to be able to do this, and it always gets confusing, it always gets a little bit hard to understand. But in the end, what I like to say is these are the costs. We knew 6th Street was bad. We knew the road was bad, we knew the curb was bad, we knew the sidewalks were bad, we knew everything was bad, and we had to replace stuff. And this is what it costs to do that. Actually, it costs a lot more to do it. You know, if we truly went and took the assessment policy that we have, the assessments probably would have been closer to $18,000 per 50-foot lot if they had everything, water and sewer and all the connections. So you do have to make some modifications. Now, if you're a property owner and you don't like that, you can object to it. And then what happens, and that's the follow-on process, that's why it's important for you to understand. The follow-on process to this is you file a written objection to the assessment with the city council before the end of this hearing, and then you have the right to file in district court and have a judge take a look at the assessment and make a determination on whether or not that assessment is fair, correct. I've been here since 2007, and I think we've only had a couple of them that have actually been appealed to court. We've never ever had an assessment that got to the final judgment of a judge. We probably settled out of court based upon the discussion that takes place. But you do have the right to do that, you know. So on the one hand, we're trying to improve roads and make everything nice. If you look up that street right now on 6th Street, what you're gonna see is a beautiful road. Actually, I was talking to Mary Elizabeth before the city council meeting started, and all she could think of is skateboarders coming down 6th Street now, because it's a straight shot coming down. One of the other things we did though is we did the sidewalks. Normally sidewalks would get assessed to property owners at 100%, but we did the sidewalks in this case to help, number one, make sure that all the sidewalks are done the right way, and number two, to make sure that the costs are not onerous, even though they are onerous for property owners. I just want you to understand that. There's property owners that this is very onerous for them. It's not gonna be easy. Some of these houses are maybe only worth $50,000 and you're gonna put an assessment on top of them, but it's the only way we can do it. Otherwise, we can't afford to get roads done. That's just the way it is. So I would just say that, and then turn it back over to the mayor, and you can open it up to, there's a couple people here that probably want to talk to the council about this.
Okay, any final questions of Jeff? And we can come back to Jeff later too. So property owners or people in the gallery, if you'd like to speak to us on this, please approach the mic, state your name and your address and your the affected address.
I just have a quick question.
Okay, if you could approach the mic and say your name and your,
Emmy Quadam, and I own the property at 204 East 6th Street, just up the street. I have a question about the sidewalks that are left to be done coming from my house, joining the city sidewalk and then going out to the street. Whose responsibility is that?
Jeff will answer
I
that
think
for you.
Jeff will answer that. Very good question.
So I believe it's a private lead.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe the contractor probably just hasn't completed that work yet. If that was in there before and it was removed as part of the project, it'll get put back in,
Okay,
okay?
that was my question.
Yeah, he's been, concrete guy is the one that we've been kind of waiting for on this project, and he's been behind schedule. So we tried to get as much as he could done in the few days that he had here, and then he's off to another project and he's coming back. So if it was removed as part of the project, it'll go back in. We just haven't done it yet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Very good question. Anyone else like to speak to the council? Okay, get back to the agenda. Blaine, if you could restate the appeals process again?
Yeah, so basically, anybody that wants to object to their assessments would have to file a written notice. Like I said, you have 2 of them that are before you, and that preserves your ability to take it on to the next step, which would be filing a notice with the district court, or filing for a court date with the district court on that. Just one other note before you're done with it. After the city council takes action, it's what we're going to do is we're going to send out a notice to all the property owners that the city council had a hearing, that they took action on it, and that it starts the clock. So property owners have 30 days from the date of the resolution to pay without interest. And then after that 30 days, which I believe is November 10th, after that, then we turn the assessments over to the county auditor, and then they get put on the taxes. And so then as soon as it gets put on the taxes, it has interest from today to the end of the year, and then interest through the end of next year, because they have to figure it out, and then they split it into 2 pieces and put it on your taxes for next year. And then each year you have a right to pay off the outstanding assessments, as long as you do it before November 15th. Otherwise, you get interest for the next year. And so it's just the way that the state law sets up the system to take place. And I'll just mention to you too that I did receive notice from, on Iowa Avenue, there's actually only 3 owners. There's Superior Industries, there's the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Farm, and then there's the USDA experiment station. They're the only 3 owners, and I did receive word from the university that they got the assessment notice, and they were gonna pay it. They just wanted more detail on it. And then lo and behold, we found out that we made a mistake on the calculation, because the Iowa Avenue was calculated for streets at 20% and not 25%. So if they wouldn't have said anything, they probably would have had a cheaper assessment. But we did recalculate that. So the assessment roll that you have in front of you to adopt has the correct amounts for Iowa Avenue for assessing streets. And I have not heard any other comments from anybody other than I did talk to the dance studio, and they had a question about the sidewalks, just like Emmy had on the sidewalks, because that one got pushed out to the street, to Columbia Avenue, and so they're wondering who's gonna connect that up. So that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, one last chance before I close the hearing. Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the city council to take for action.
Mr. Mayor, I guess in looking back at our project we did, gosh, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago already when we did West 9th Street. The scope of work, Jeff, I think is very similar to what we just did here on East 6th Street. And if I remember right, I think the average assessment was somewhere in that 8 to 10 maybe range. And if you consider what the increased costs that we've currently are experiencing, this, in just looking at raw numbers, it looks reasonable to me in comparison when you look at the scope of work that is completed here. So, and then the fact that we are doing the sidewalks also, I think that's a big benefit alone. So it just seems reasonable to me, and I just don't think we're really that far out of line.
Yes, and on the entire project, we're not assessing for any sidewalk.
No,
And the entire project would just be
Right.
Columbia and 6th.
Columbia and 6th, yeah. And we're not assessing for any storm sewer. You know, so that was another key piece, because 6th Street did not have storm sewer, you know, so it gravity flowed down the road, and that was a concern that was brought up when the project was developed, and so now it has storm sewer to bring it underground.
Have you closed the meeting to the public?
I
there?
have closed the public hearing, yes.
I'd just like to state too, if anybody's here that lives there or looking at these assessments, and we're painting a broad brush with that, and I can see that some of them, you know, some of the houses probably are a lower value, and that's quite a bit. And so, like Blaine has stated twice, you have avenues to go through. Even though that whatever we decide to do tonight, you have the avenue to go to have your property assessed, so that whatever the value of that is versus the assessments that are put on it is within law. So I mean, you have that right. I just, I want to make sure that you're clearly getting that, and Blaine stated it twice, and we talked about it. That it is very difficult to do these things, and that's what we've been doing for a long time. It's assessment based, because a lot of property in the town would not qualify to be taxable. And so this is the way that we're doing it. But I do see that different properties have these conditions, and they need to, take those avenues if you need to. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that, and it's not a bad thing to do. It's your right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, again, you know, you look at the property, you look at the projects, well, it's so much nicer. I know it's not done, but they're so much nicer than what it was, so. And it's expensive. Okay, so we have the resolution, unless there's other discussion. How do we do it, Blaine, on the ones that are, that brought a,
You adopt the resolution, and they reserve the right to file appeal with the district court.
okay, so we don't have to address that?
You don't have to address them.
Okay.
I will move on the resolution adopting the assessments in conjunction with the East Sixth Street, North Columbia Avenue, and the North Iowa Avenue project.
I will second.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Waller,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Gullikson,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave, whatever you'd like to do. We'll go to our regular agenda. Reading and approval of minutes from September 27th, regular meeting.
I'll move approval of the regular meeting from September 27th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we have the condensed version of the same minutes.
I will move approval of the condensed minutes from the September 27 meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Carried. We have the consent agenda consisting of the audit of city bills, revenue and expenditure report, transfer report, raffle permit from the Morris Fire Relief Association, and the added temporary on-sale liquor license for the Eagles. I will move approval of the items on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion or any questions on any of those items? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have no petitions, requests, and communications. We have ordinances and resolutions. We have a resolution approving updated Title IV Civil Rights Program for Morris Transit.
So this is a requirement of our grant agreement that we have with the state and federal government to get our grant funding. So this is paperwork that has to be done. I think the resolution is the resolution in the back of this. I think,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so it's just standard documents that we have to wind up having in place for our transit program. And actually, it is a lot of stuff that you have to go through to be able to get this funding. So it's a constant battle to make sure that everything is being taken care of, and they do a terrific job doing that.
You know, in reading through that information, Blaine, I seen that, you know, they do a census of population versus, you know, the ones that require, you know, if you have a Hispanic population that would require, the number is like 2%, it's 5%. If you exceed 5% of the population, then we're currently at 2%, so we're under that, of course. But my question is, if we would happen to slip over that 5%, what would we have to do then? Probably have an interpreter on board or something of that nature, or?
So if we ever hit the 5% or above with, you know, either Hispanic or another or culture still choose to do Spanish, you know, rates, settings, and any brochures about the transit, just to help people.
Okay. I thought that was interesting.
Thank you.
I'll just move on that resolution and approving the updated title for civil rights program for the Morris Transit.
I will, go ahead.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Selby,
Yes.
Waller,
Yes.
Gullikson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Fairby,
Yes. We have a resolution appointing judges for the state general election for November 8th, 2022. I will move approval of the resolution.
I will second, please.
And I'd certainly like to say thank you to all the people listed as judges and alternates. They're taking a day or more out of their lives so that we can get through the voting. Appreciate it. Any other comments? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Gullikson,
Yes.
Waller,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Fairby,
Yes. We have a resolution authorizing an excuse me, an architectural contract with Widseth for the transit office and bus garage addition project.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to look, here's the proposal that they provided. Again, you know, we have a grant from the state and federal government to put an office on the transit bus garage and add 3 bays and a wash bay. And it's part of another set of grants that we also have for electric transit bus and the power to come in for it and the charging station. There's 4 separate grants that we're working off of for this stuff. This one is very onerous. We've been working on this for quite a while and it gets very tedious trying to know and understand what the state is going to require. It took quite a while to get the RFP put together that was acceptable to the state to even request proposals. One of the steps in the process was to have a pre-proposal conference, which we did, and we had 3 architect firms came in. Actually, one of the firms was the firm that did the bus garage up in Little Falls, and of course Widseth is part of the team that we typically work with for architecture, and actually I'll talk in a little bit about the library. But we only had 1 proposal that came in, so I went back to the state and I said we only had 1 proposal, and they said you have to get written reasoning from the other 2 as to why they didn't propose, and both of them were too busy. And ours was a little bit smaller project than the Little Falls bus garage, so they weren't interested in it. It was a firm out of St. Cloud. So we did that, and so then the next step in the process was to look through the proposal. It looked good, met all the qualifications, rated out the way it was supposed to, and then the next step now is to get a contract in place. I'm asking you to approve a contract even though we don't have a state-approved contract yet because they want us to do that. It's complicated. But so what'll happen is we'll get the contract, we'll run it by the state coordinator. If it looks good, then we're allowed to sign it. And then the architect will then take over this project and follow it through to completion, which is the normal process that we normally would do in a engineering project or an architect project. Now, Widseth is actually they did the Pomme de Terre Park project for us. They're the ones that did the architectural work on that, and it's my understanding they did the Apostolic Church down in the south side of Morris. Talking to Greg Bowl, the lead architect that's going to be working on our project. So they're a good architect firm, and I'm recommending that we we get authorization to sign a contract if it meets all the requirements that the state has, which I think it will, because we've been in touch with them on it. Questions?
When this all is said and done, if everything works the way it's supposed to, what's gonna be our cost of this?
Well,
$200,000?
right now it's $200,000. But the only thing that's been done so far is that we had another architect firm that did the preliminary design and the preliminary cost estimate for this. And so once this contract's in place, the architect will do the final design, the plans and specifications, give us a cost estimate of what that would be so that we can get ready to bid out, and then we'll know what the final costs are gonna be. I can't imagine it's not gonna be more, just because it takes such a long time to get through these steps that they put in place to do, and we know and understand that material costs have gone up quite a bit in the last 2 years. They might have been coming down a little bit, but we'll see. And then we go from there, because then we'll go back to the state and they'll take a look at that, and it could be that they free up some more money to be able to do this. They want to see this thing done. And just as a quick side note, originally it was the office, one bay and a wash bay, and literally we're standing in the middle of the bus garage, and the guy that we work with that's in charge of all this said, well, have you ever thought about expansion in the future? And it's like, well, no, because we're just trying to get this done. And he said, well, if you're ever thinking about it, then you might as well do it now. And it's like, okay. So then we added 2 more wash bays, and they did another grant to pay for that, and then they rolled it all into the one grant. But they had to do them separately before they could put them together. So it is going to be a fantastic operation, and I still marvel at the fact that now they're working out of this nice office here that's big, but they were working out of that little corner room in City Hall for all those years with that transit operation. So this is going to be a very nice thing. But we'll know sometime towards the end of the year what the final design. And the one thing, when we did the walkthrough with the architects, it was pretty straightforward. There's nothing surprising about this. It's not a fancy building, and it's not going to be a really fancy office, but it was pretty straightforward. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises other than the amounts for materials and things like that.
Yeah, it won't actually be but it really won't be for public.
No.
I mean, it's just to run the transit.
No, it's gonna be a place where they can run their operation. They'll have a conference room that they can do trainings in. There's one of the things that luckily Whitney's in charge of the drug alcohol program for transit, and not me, but it's very specific how that has to be done and where it's done. And right now they've been using the fire hall and to do those kind of things, but they'll have a locker room, they'll have a place, a nice bathroom to utilize and all that kind of stuff. But, the wash bay is gonna be an opportunity for them to keep the buses clean, and free of salt and stuff like that. So that's gonna be a nice addition, and I would imagine some of the other shop people might sneak over there and clean some of their vehicles too, so it'll help everybody.
Good, all right.
Yeah, it's long overdue in my estimation. Like you
Yep.
said, they were
It'll
working
be
out of
good.
a cracker box for quite a few years. Pretty happy that we can do this.
Do they think it's gonna go over the $1 million?
Nobody knows.
It would be ridiculous if it did. It's not that big.
I know. I haven't looked at it at all. Councilmember, so I can't honestly answer the question.
What are we talking, like three bay doors, I think, or something? Is it?
Yeah, 3 bays and an office.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be
I just know that a lot of times on these projects, it's amazing how things add up very fast.
Yeah, it's not as bad as the airport, because the airport, the federal FAA requirements on airports are really bad. You know, to the point where, you know, and we've talked about this before at the council, where to even get a local contractor to be able to bid on it is very difficult at the airport, just because the rule book is so thick. This isn't as bad, I don't think, as that is, but we'll see. I mean, my biggest thing is material costs are up, and whether or not the preliminary estimate was a good estimate based upon that, we'll see. That was the oddest part for me, is the architect that did the preliminary design and cost estimate was not allowed to be a proposer for the final design and construction, which, you know, I just didn't get that, but, you know, but there is a design, and it's pretty straightforward design. Everybody saw it, and they'll be able to work with it.
So, it's up to the council for the resolution.
I will move on that resolution
Thank you.
authorizing an architectural contract with Winseth for the transit office and bus garage addition.
I will second that. Is there any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gullikson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Selby,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes, thank you. City managers report.
Two things that aren't on there. One is the League of Minnesota Cities is going to be here tomorrow at 3:30. If you can stop by, that'd be nice. They got away from having big regional meetings, and so then their leadership has just been going out to. They try to pick a little bit bigger city to host the smaller cities. I did invite all the small towns around here. Whether or not anybody will be here, I don't know, but it is a good chance to talk to the league people about what they think is going to happen in the legislature and some other things, and just what's happening with the League of Minnesota Cities.
Is that gonna be Elizabeth here then?
Nope, that's Elizabeth is with Coalition of Greater Minnesota
Oh.
Cities. So it's probably going to be Gary Carlson. I think Gary's coming out, and probably the president of the league. I couldn't tell you who it is right now, but that's typically the group that comes out.
Okay.
So it'll be a good chance to sit down and just talk about what's happening. And then Thursday we have the dedication for the solar, and that's at 1:30. That'll be right here. We'll have some refreshments and stuff, and go get a picture and take care of that. That's been a long time coming. And then the one thing I will touch on from my newsletter is that we got our insurance renewal, and I about fell off my chair. I mean, I just don't understand it, but we have the public employees insurance plan, and the renewal letter was 49% increase in insurance costs. So I estimated that was about $100,000 for the city, based upon our, the insurance benefit that we have. And then I checked with Rebecca Young, and they got the same increase at the county. So what we do is we have the ability to reach out, and it's much easier to do it nowadays because of the system that's in place. We have the ability to reach out to the other three major carriers, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Actually, Shane Monson said they got their renewal from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that was, I think, 9.5% more for the upcoming year. But the last time we looked at Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was a lot more than what we're paying for PEEP. And then you have Health Partners and Medica. So we'll see what those rates look like. And then hopefully that's going to happen here in the next couple weeks, and then we'll get a better idea of what we're looking at for insurance. Last few years, it's been 10%, and I reached out to them, and it just seemed like they started losing groups, and that affects all the other groups that are there, so. And then I'll just answer any questions you have on anything else. And then if you-
Morris Floral is looking better.
Well,
Thank
they're,
you.
they're getting to work on it.
Yeah. And it didn't take very much to make it look better.
Well, yeah.
A few hours with a Bobcat. Any other comments or questions on the city manager report? I think I would like to address the issues that Mary Elizabeth brought up. East side bathrooms, is our contractor done with those?
I
The
think,
bathroom part's pretty close to being done, however, we're waiting for the band shell plastering company to come back and finish that, so it is an insurance claim and it's all covered.
Right,
You just haven't been able to close that out.
yeah, so the bathroom should be done
okay. But then they're probably ready to be closed anyway.
for the winter, yeah.
For the winter, right? Yeah. Okay, and that was an insurance claim,
Right,
so,
yep.
and I don't know if there's any answer about the culprits of the vandalism.
No, but we've seen additional vandalism. It's ongoing, so then we've talked about, possibly putting up cameras, trail cameras, some way to try to catch the people that are doing it, but, it's pretty sad when you fix something and then it gets vandalized again.
Yeah. And the sidewalks that she mentioned, we have one more year of kind of grinding and fixing up and tidying up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's planned, right?
Well, and the other thing, so there's that, they're doing the concrete cutting to level the sidewalk cracks. And then actually Russ and the Public Works guys have been going around and cutting out tree roots where trees are pushing up sidewalks and then relaying those pieces because you couldn't really do sidewalk cutting on those. And then there's some mud jacking that has to be done on some of the sidewalks where they dipped where the utility crossings were. But we can go take a look at like the front of the line. Actually, I got an email from Ann the last, not this, was it last week? Somebody drove through during the farmer's market in front of the driveway, cut through. And I'm like, what? How in the world? If you go over there and look, that's a great big huge double, I don't know how wide that sidewalk is, but somebody drove through there while they had the farmer's market. And nobody got a license plate number on them, but we can go over there and look at it and see what the issue is with the sidewalks, because this will be an ongoing thing to make sure everything is mud jacked or ground down or whatever we need to do to level these things out.
And lastly, the library bathrooms, and I think you wanted to talk about that just.
Well,
briefly.
yeah, so actually it's, one of the things that we talked about when we took the tours of the park, and actually Greg Bowl is the architect from Woodseth, who's going to be working on the bus garage. So he came down and he looked at a number of buildings, because Dean would like to maybe do some remodeling expansion at the liquor store. And Ann had brought up the concerns about whether or not the library is handicapped accessible. And so then Greg is looking at that. One of the biggest problems is that to get into the hallway where the bathrooms are, you have to go through a great big huge door that is really hard to get through. But like Ann said, if you take that door out so people can get at the bathrooms, and as soon as the bathroom door opens, you'll hear like a toilet flushing or something, and libraries are supposed to be quiet. So bottom line is that Greg actually had the blueprints for the library. And so he's looking at the possibility of redoing those bathrooms, and we talked about that before where, we come up with these ideas and what's the next step in the process. Well, the next step is to have an architect come in and take a look at them. He's also gonna look at the concession stand over at Wells Park to see what a potential project could be there. And there might be grant funding for that one, like we had with Pomni Terre Park. Could be grant funding for a library project to update bathrooms and stuff like that. So it's kind of ironic that you came in, because Greg was just here and he went through all the buildings and took a look at them, you know, to try to figure out, you know, what's the next step in that. And
Good.
so we'll hear more from him.
Mayor, regarding your comment on cameras at Eastside Park there, I think we have talked about that in the past, but it would seem to me that would be relatively easy to do, to get that up, so if we could run that up to dispatch, so they'd have a little monitor right there. You know, they have
Oh,
people
like a closed
staffed there
circuit,
anyway.
right to dispatch.
Go right to dispatch, they could monitor it and done. Because they're there 24 hours, aren't they? Pretty
Yeah,
much?
right.
Somebody is.
I guess that's certainly worth looking into.
Yeah, because something has to happen. I mean, and they're just, you know, when they're beating doorknobs off doors, you know, it's just senseless.
I think the time has come to maybe take some action in that regard, because we seem like it's a constant fight.
Yeah. All right, great. I'm hoping Mary Elizabeth watches this tape, and then she will have her answers. Otherwise, could you?
I'll send her. I'll send her an email.
Thank you.
I have her email, although she's not at the university anymore. But I think I have her home email.
Okay, informational item. We had a canvassing board meeting to be set for November 10th. Is that? We have a canvassing board for the city?
Yep.
Kim and I can't be on it because we're running,
Right.
so it'll have to be one of you two brave souls. Well, we're all running, I guess.
Isn't Jeff and
That's right.
Brian running too?
Yeah.
That's right. We're all running.
I think-
How's that gonna work, Blake?
I think you can be on the canvassing board
If you're
because you're
running?
just looking at the results of the election. But we can double check on that too.
I didn't think you could be on it if you were on the ballot. That's
don't know
kinda
the
odd, because
answer.
we're all on it.
Well, we have to have one, so somehow
Okay.
it has to be allowable.
So we need to make a motion for that?
I think,
And
yeah,
What is the time that we do that?
I can't remember the last one that we did. Would have been, what, 2 years ago?
I think I sat on it.
Was it at, I
before.
think we might have done it at noon on Thursday. What date did Stacy say, the 10th?
Do you need, how many people? You just need one?
The 10th is,
Thursday.
Because I think I was the only one that was on it for the city, and then there was a county representative
well,
too.
that's the county one. This
The
isn't the.
county
It's one and the same.
This is
though,
the
isn't
city
it?
one, right?
canvassing board meeting to be set.
They're one and the same, aren't they?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Seems to me when I sat on it, the county representatives were there and I was there, and the votes were all tabulated.
Does it have to be set now? She didn't say anything to me. She's busy working on letters to go out to the property owners for special assessments, but I don't know. Did she say anything to you about that?
We could probably do it next meeting.
I'm thinking we can do it next meeting.
Okay, all right.
So you'll find out who can be on it?
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, we can do that.
It's only one person.
Aaron was away for a training, otherwise he might have been able to answer that question, but.
Okay, anything else to come before the council? Meeting adjourned.